Good morning. It's 11:11 on June 23rd, 2025. For the record, this is Yahweh Elohim Yahuwah or Joshua. I don't know. Even though with all the success in the Iran situation, I'm having a bit of a melancholic day. Because unfortunately, most of my work right now isn't working with my, existing body. And I know that sounds in some ways kind of messed up, but it's like trying to go around in spirit and trying to follow up in the flesh with people to make sure that they're prepared to preach the truth. They're prepared to lead their congregations under my wings and into safety and into eternal salvation, right? Into all the things that a human being on this planet right now requires. But the melancholy comes because I really feel like that I'm going nowhere in terms of progress. And I mean, maybe it just is a testament of the time, because if I look at perspective-wise, if I look at perspective as the flesh, I think myself sharing the soul of the Creator, I find is not only awestruck, it's amazing, it's so fantastic, it's so amazing, it's beautiful, it's this feeling that I would love to try to describe to the world. I would love to try to, help people understand how this works within me, because being a flesh with the soul of the Creator, with the spirit of the Creator, right? As I am the Creator. But, there is also the flesh part of me, And, I don't know, I guess in some ways, what helps me in days like this is, I think of it kind of like a judge. So, when the judge is on the bench, I guess, and he's, got his cases before him, right? He's just the judge at that point, he's operating from, hard facts, and he has to make judgments in every case. And so in that setting, it doesn't matter if that judge has family at home. It doesn't matter if that judge likes chocolate ice cream or strawberry. In that moment, nothing about that judge's personal self goes into play when he's on the bench and wears the robe. But when the judge comes off the bench and the robe comes off and he's out in public, it's a Saturday or a Sunday and he's not at work, the judge may like strawberry ice cream, he may have friends, he may like to go fishing, he may like to do, whatever it is he does, but does that make him any less of a judge on Saturday and Sunday? I don't think so, but that's, I guess, how I feel, is no matter if I'm at the grocery store, or if I'm at home, or if I'm asleep, or if I'm in the shower, or if I'm talking to somebody at a birthday party, I am always Yahweh. That's my name, that's my person. But at the same time, I possess the ability to keep my judge robe on the hook, if you will, in my office. So much like the judge, right? When he goes out in public, he may see a crime happening at McDonald's or something. Well, the judge isn't necessarily going to run out there and tackle the person and then sentence him right then and there. That would be kind of weird and kind of stupid. But it's possible, right? If that person committed the crime in that judge's district, that person would come up for judgment in front of that particular judge. But also, likewise, the judge's personal family and friends would go and see another magistrate. But generally speaking, because the judge has, at least assumed, a more righteous circle and a more closed circuit, that the things he does are more separated from general society. So the chances of him actually seeing one of his own people or family in the courtroom are very, very, very little. And that's how I am, as I obviously have to go out into public, and, I possess the ability to make my judgment upon a person in that very moment, simply through opinion. But in a way, I circumvent that for my own comfort and my own family's comfort by trying to, in a sense, maintain, I distance myself, I guess, from those situations, because if not, most of what I feel, believe it or not, is a lot of sadness for my church. I literally look at my churches as, I'll even call them my churches. We'll call them Jesus's church. And I use that name, blasphemy, mainly because I sometimes give credit to humanity that they're smarter than they are, they understand more than they do, and in reality, they really don't. A lot of people have genuinely went to church their whole life, and this is per the churches that are around my area, the ones that I visit, the ones that I knock on the door, and I talk to people because I want to know what my churches need and want, and that's a really hard pill to swallow when I show up and I am the one that's prophesied, I'm the one that's been written about, I'm the one that holds the power, I'm the one that has the name, I'm the one that has everything that you need to check every single box in truth, and you know what I mean? I'm the real deal. That's kind of what I mean, and yet people they don't want that. It's they don't want the truth, they don't want realness, they want to go back to La La Land. And it only makes me just, anguish, in pain, literal, heartbreak. It does. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because, I talk to almost anybody, even people that know me, and they are under, it's this spell. It really is. It's a great delusion, and they literally cannot pronunciate my name. They can't even, it's fire to them. It really is. And I mean, I've had people as a test, okay, all right, whether or not you understand that this is who I am, I want you to say the name. They won't. They will refuse. And then it's then I call upon an angel, and I have that angel, do a quick thorough inspection, because if I do it and I find something amiss, which I know I would, right, that person would be under judgment in that moment, and I would not want to do that. I really don't. I don't care how bad a person is. I want everyone to have a legitimate opportunity to make a conscious decision. I don't want people making decisions because their pastor gave them some sort of comfort or some sort of, in their mind, a logical explanation as to why they're doing this against what I've said, or why they're doing this against what I've said. And all churches do it, and my churches, my congregation, my body, right, are very few in number, and even them, So if that's who's listening to these videos, I know you guys are having your own issues and your own infighting and your own doubts. And, you know, I can understand where you get that, but at the same time, that also adds to my melancholy, because it's like, I would love to get active with my church, but my church is afraid of me. And it's like, I have those who believe, but then they're like overly terrified and afraid to like interact with me. And it's like, I don't want people to feel that way. You know, as your Heavenly Father, you should feel protected. You should feel cared about. You should feel loved. You should feel that you can truly come to me with anything in prayer, right? Or, I mean, we're in the modern age. You know, I'm willing to accept an email if someone has a general concern, and I don't look at it like, oh, this person is so unconnected they needed to email me something. Not at all. You know, I keep all my avenues open for my people. If you look at it in a way, like my churches, my real churches, not the Jesus churches, but I look at my people, right? You guys are my customers, and I can supply not only eternal life, but deliverance from situations from people, places, and things. But that divine protection especially is going to be required now, as we're ramping up, you know, as I'm continuing to ramp up the end days events. You know, there's going to be people lost, and I, you know, it really breaks my heart when, you know, I have to go and I have to sift through people that never heard about me, but their pastor did, or their pastor knew, but their pastor tried to spin something in this web where the pastor's not going to look bad in his congregation, but he's trying to see if the congregation's going to like be accepting of this. And it's so weird, because like 98% of all religious societies generally want one thing, right? They want reprieve from this world. They want salvation from sin. They want deliverance from usually sin or situations. And they want the heavenly or the divine things to actually be real. And like, I'm here delivering that every single day. Delivering it as I am deliverance. I am acting on behalf of deliverance. Like, as I am more like a conscious element who has different facets of doing things. As God, I'm not like man. You know, Johnny over here is born to a carpenter, and the carpenter became his profession, and like, that's Johnny, right? That's a human being. As Elohim, I wear all types of different hats, and I act accordingly. I act according to my own purpose, pattern, plan, and will. And it's really sad that, you know, many churches that I've already lambasted, many churches that I've already made my petty threats, and, you know, they want to continue to, you know, basically say, screw you. You know, they're waiting on Jesus. You know, they're waiting on Muhammad. They're waiting on who the hell knows. And it just breaks my heart, you know, because when I go back and I look at people's situations, more time than not, the pastors they're kind of going with the flow of what their church wants to do. So they're literally choosing what the church body wants to do, and then they do it, versus what I say to do. Because these pastors, and now you can understand this, right? You know, they've made preaching their career for 20 years, 30, 40, 50 years. And their customers, right, are people who come to church, you know? And so I understand the mentality, because I created humans. I fully understand it. And being here now, interacting with humanity, right, as a man, you know, as God in human form, I understand the same struggles, because I have the same emotional palette that the average person does. So obviously I feel sad, I feel wrath, I feel, you know, happiness, I feel satisfaction, I feel pain and pleasure. You know, I have all these things, because that's really what gives me, you know, a good heading and how to deal with the situation, and not deal with it from 30,000 feet in the air. Because as I've said before, it's really easy to just, you know, pop in spirit and say, yeah, like, Jack Hibbs is still an insubordinate person, and the church that he's in is growing in the wrong direction, and like, I've made my threats, I've made my case, I've put my truth out, but the fact is, doesn't matter what Jack believes at this point. If he doesn't feed his churches what they want, then he starves. And we know that human beings, right? Food, fire, water, shelter, right? The 4 basic needs of a human being don't change. It don't matter if it's 12,000 years ago or 12 days ago or 12 hours ago. At any point in a human being's day, week, month, year, those are thing, right? Human being wakes up. What's one of the first things you do? You eat, right? You need water constantly throughout the day, right? You need to stay hydrated. You need shelter when it rains, when it snows, when it's sunny. Even if it's a good day, human beings can die from exposure, right? And that is shelter. So what I mean is, and then everything that a human being does is tasked with, right, is maintaining food, fire, water, shelter. And fire meaning like to cook, to cook your food or to have warmth. Now, obviously, we have modern stuff for that. But point is, that is a big driver, right, of human beings. And, that's kind of my point. So you have pastors that are still human beings. They need to meet their needs. And in a modern society, money essentially is the short answer for a human to achieve those things. If you have the money, well, you have as much water, food, shelter, and fire as you need. And by working those purposes for their customers, they're able to satisfy those needs. And in their mind, in their heart, right, maybe they got into ministry because they had some type of touching or they had some type of deliverance, regardless of the name, right? They had a supernatural experience a lot of times, and that brings them to a faith. And usually based on your cultural position in the world, right? If you had a spiritual experience in Iran, maybe you chalked it up to Muhammad. If you had a spiritual experience in America, it's probably Jesus. If you had one in, Asia, right, maybe it's Buddha. If you have one in South Taiwan, maybe it's Krishna or Brahma, or whatever. My point is, human beings, that's what you guys do. And again, that is a genome that was included with humanity to combat the primitive genome. And that actually is what gives you a bit of a conscience, not a full conscience when you're what you would call like rebirthed, because that full conscience makes you in the reverse. Like if you don't have that rebirth, you don't possess the physical ability to say my name, or if you do, it's butchered, right? Or that's what I mean. Like you just don't. Think of Paul Walsh, right? The guy's been in seminary his whole life, and I mean, even when he leaves comments on my stuff, right? He's so clueless about truth, he still says Jesus. And you would think somebody who's studied and gone through all this, that they would have known like the very basic fundamental facts of the religion in which they're trying to teach. But kind of point, human beings don't do that, because that doesn't do anything for fire, water, food, or shelter. It doesn't do anything to that. But instead, they'll focus on how do we sell the message so then we get tithings? How do we make people want to come and have fun at church so we get more money? How do we make people more interested in small groups so then they bring their friends? And so the driver is everyone is trying to meet the human need, versus me as Elohim, as God in the flesh, right? And my birth name just so happens to be Joshua, which maybe there's something to that the last physical manifestation of God on earth was who people call Jesus. But then if you were to say his name correctly, then it's a pattern. Oh, so the creator comes in a garb of flesh. His name was actually Joshua, right? I don't really care what you break it down as. And then the Joshua before that, because it drives me nuts that I'll have some congregations that they get my name right, but then they don't believe that it's me, right? Because I'm white, Like, that's folly, and that's really ignorant. And then that also hurts my feelings, because I spend so much time lamenting on my churches, setting up protection for all types of people, places, and things before I throw a judgment or a tornado, a hurricane, a volcano, an earthquake, bombs even. I prophesy all the time for my people, so you guys have a heads up of what's coming. I don't get any glory by the mainstream media. I don't get any glory by any of my churches that I'm still putting my arm out and saving, and instead they give it to Jesus, who doesn't exist. They give it to Allah, who is non-existent. They give it to their neighbor, who helped them chop down a tree, but not me, that saved their house. Or if I do get glory, it's the very bland God, and then still no association to me. When I am He, I am Yahweh, and I am in the flesh on earth. And that's another thing, whether you're looking at doctrine, whether you're looking at just your inner heart, like, that's something that's really wrong with the human being. If someone sees me and goes like, I believe in God, but that's not, like I'm saying, I do all the God things. Like, only I can do the things that I do because I am really who I am. And I get no glory for it. And I get no, like, not even like a pep talk, not even like, hey, yeah, we really love you. We really thank you. We really see that this is taxing as can be on me day in and day out, and I'm trying to literally save the world, raise up people, as many as I can that can be saved, and then, like, defiantly as physically able, I have churches that they've even talked about it. Like, they've had their own councils. I've sat in spirit on some of these councils, and these little church people, they've gathered in back rooms and they've talked about it, and they said, basically we've made the commitment. Like, it's so weird. I've literally heard this verbatim, and I mean, thousands of different churches in America, and it's like, it's so uncanny to the fallen angels when they were like, we've agreed to do this thing, and, like, if we're going to hell, we're going to hell together, because they're that hot and heavy on Jesus, and they're that hot and heavy on, man's doctrine, that they're waiting on Jesus to come down from the sky. And it don't matter if you're taking a piss, or you're in the grocery store, or you're in the middle of a sermon, right? According to these Christians, which gets me upset, because I'm like, this is so untrue that it's like driving me crazy. And they would rather go to their grave unsaved, uncared for by me and unuseful to me, that it's like they are like the fallen angels, right? Where they're like, well, we're committed to this so much that, to the fallen angels, right? They're like, look, we done did what we're doing. We've done made Yahweh mad, and now we have committed to the point that there's no return, right? They committed to that. They committed to 12,000 years of, being in pigs, or being disembodied, or unfortunately taking human bodies. The human body don't last long in that process. But I'm just saying, like, they have walked this and roamed this earth for over 12,000 years, and, like, I'm going to be handling them. I don't care if they go from pig to person, from person to pig. I really don't care. Like, I'm going to get to a point comfortably where I'll be able to snap my finger and make that adjustment, and then all will be good. But again, I'm not doing that for people that can't see me. Because it feels like a lot of times, and I talk to Asher all the time about this stuff, like, I feel like that woman has two jobs. Like, she works her job that pays the bills and stuff, and her other job is basically counseling with me, and as tough as I can be and am, she really does a great job at, like, kind of keeping me down to earth, quite literally. She'll talk me off a ledge a lot of times, and sometimes me and her get into it. Sometimes she has her own stuff that she's dealing with, and believe it or not, even though we are a literal supernatural family, all of us being in the flesh has its challenges. And our biggest challenge comes with human interaction, because our ideals, our mindsets, our values, our morals are like top of the line. And then the other stuff. But humanity by nature isn't like that. We're just not. And that's a lot of times, again, like my sadness, is I try to celebrate the little wins, and there's nothing more frustrating, than listening to, my wife, Asher, she calls it like baiting me, basically I'll see these videos and it feels like I'm being baited, they'll have the right initials or they'll have the right name or they'll do something, and then it's like, I'm sending spirit out. I'm like, okay, well, that's all right. I can't find them in spirit, but let's hear what they got to say. Maybe this will help me make that connection with this person or group or church, only to then like review their situation, and it's like a pie chart, if you will, and I'm like, okay, so you basically picked up the true name because you found a logical connection, but that's where it stops. And so now they're carrying the banner, or waiting on Yahshua, like, or waiting on a black man, or waiting on this person or that person, or like, I'm it. Like, I'm it. Like, I'm it. I'm bald. I got a beard. I got blue eyes. I'm white, and that is what it is. My people are Jewish. My people are black. My people are white, and the people, human beings, are my people. Right? That's it. And it really makes me mad that groups, people, places, or things, right? They will be like, I don't know. I'll take 5. I'll catch up. Alright, and we're back. So, got some house chores I'm working on. I like to clean when I'm feeling like sad or kind of down. Because I like to be able to keep my body physically going and feeling productive. That's a reward, for me, having a clean house, clean yard, clean car, clean children, clean pets. That is all a part of my fatherly duties. So I take great pride in that, and it's kind of funny. You don't really hear this much anymore, but like cleanliness is next to godliness. Like, that is a real thing. Really is. But it's a strange thing, because I look at all the potential that right now that we could be doing if the mass churches, including Catholics. That's another thing, I don't want to make enemies, but at the same time, I'm not able to bend the truth to accommodate people, because that's a dangerous road. Appeasement really is a dangerous road, because if I appease one, then I essentially, say it's okay for this or it's okay for that, and my chair stinks, and I can't do that, and like I genuinely I don't even try. Like I am just who and what I am, and this has always been at least I think I've said like in the last 12,000 years, virtually has been like a very similar hang up with people. And I mean, as I understand it, it doesn't make it feel any better. It really doesn't. Just the other day, we were actually getting crickets for my daughter's bearded dragon. And we're in the pet store, not even thinking about buying another pet. I already have enough. Well, we ended up getting Cameron a hamster. And I've mentioned this before, Cameron and Asher have like a fertility divine gift. So heaven help you if you have functional female parts, because come around either one of them and then you're like assured going to be pregnant. Anyway, we get the hamster, and literally, lo and behold, this morning, we've got a fresh crop of babies. When the pet store lady actually told us it was a male, and then I said, well, I'm pretty sure it's a female, and I think I would know. Anyway, so we have now at least 5 hamster babies, which is cool. I mean, we've had that numbers explosion. I think I mentioned this with the bees in Cameron's Wall. I mean, in a matter of 4 months, we had crazy amount of bees. Now the bees are doing good. They're in the beehive. I just checked on them today. Yeah, checked on the queen. She's rocking. And funny, you know, it's funny too because, you know, I know that a lot of people in the way they think about me or how they think I operate, you know, is like, well, God, you know, all-knowing, yes. Well, omnipotent, yes. Like all these things, yes. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't find value in the process. So I myself am a student as well as a God, as well as a creator and an experiencer. And so being in the earth domain, having my pet projects, right? The bees being one of those. Excuse me, I was encountering, you know, because essentially we had the bees setting up in the wall after a hurricane. And like I said, gosh, less than 90 days after is when a neighbor pointed out that, hey, there's bees in the wall type thing. Anyway, I started trapping them out to get them into a proper beehive. And it was interesting because before I even knew about the bees, I was talking to Asher and I was saying, like, well, if the humans are still like on this learning curve, right, it's going to take a little time for them to get used to me, get used to my name, and still feel comfortable being able to hold worship services and regular church services and biblical services, making some adjustments, and then truly, you know, having that understanding, knowing who I am, and then not being afraid of when I come, which is another thing. I would think people would be happy when I show up, but I feel like most people are afraid. Anyway, I'm actually like paralleling into like so many different points, but one of the points I was trying to make was, so before the bees, showed up or were identified by my neighbor, I was talking to Asher and I'm like, I really need to try to figure out how I can work with the genetics of the bees to see what seems to be the issue for dying off, because not only do I not want my creatures to be eliminated, but at the same time these things have happened all throughout creation. It's nothing new, right? And a lot of times it results in a split. It's why you have 50 different types of scorpions, hundreds of different types of flies, or different types of virtually every creature has a different counterpart to it, and each version, if you will, is what they are, is a recreation by me. Humans might look at that as evolution, but it's not evolution. It's actually me, the creator, changing something in the genome, and then it takes on different characteristics based on its location, based on its current situation. I try to give it the best opportunity possible for survival, based on mutation. So, that being said, right, then the bees obviously came because that was my will being done. I needed them there because I needed a close-up specimen to monitor. So as I got them into the beehive, now we're monitoring, and now I'm able to solve the veramite issue by genetic mutation. So now I'm effectively not using a pesticide or a chemical, or other than using nothing other than my God power. I'm able to fight off the mites, different things I'm doing. Well, anyway, now the colony's doing pretty well. They're thriving. When according to professionals or mankind's mind, right, that it was a lost cause, right? The queen was gone. There were, for the most part, right, the majority of the bees actually swarmed and left me with just a few hundred. So according to the experts, right, it was a lost cause. Well, I'm Yahweh. That is not an option. So between Cameron's fertility power and my creation power, I was able to raise a 300 bee colony from the grave, and now we're building numbers into the thousands. Now we've got the queen laying eggs like crazy. We've got honeycomb built out about that big front and back. Now we're working on our second and third frame. Beautiful honey coming in, Florida citrus honey, some of the best. It's very dark brown. It's very good. Anyway, so that was one thing. But I was going to say, actually, is when we were in the pet store yesterday, picking out this hamster that now had babies. Or no, not yesterday. Today's Monday, Sunday, Saturday. We were at the store on Saturday. Anyway, that's another thing. I'll probably jump into that next about like transacting business on the Sabbath, right? That's not something I like to do. But at the same time, I need the world to change and conform to those types of standards, right? You go back 50, 60 years ago, it was Sunday, right? Which should have been Saturday, but I'm not going to make a big fuss out of it. Either way, right? If it was going to be Sunday, the day of worship, then everything used to be closed. Is my point I was just trying to make is, you know, it would, if you needed something, you better get it on Saturday because Sunday everything was closed. And then everybody started putting stuff on Saturday. In retrospect, you know, most people, you know, like if you're gonna have a weekend, right? Friday and Saturday should be your weekend days, and then the first day of the week should start on Sunday all the way to Thursday is really how the week is set up, at least in my intent. And again, I'm not such a stickler that I'm like gonna whomp someone over the head for it. That's kind of my point. But I'm so like all over the place today. But anyway, so I'm at the checkout counter and I got the new hamster. Her name, we named her KC, like the letter K and then C, mainly because everyone knows Asher is a Chiefs fan, and coming up now past, she starts getting serious about it after June because I don't really follow it like that. But I'm trying to take an interest for her. But I see a lady coming up to the parking lot, and it's like a pet store most commonly, right? They have like all glass windows, and so I'm at the checkout counter and I see she's wearing a black shirt with white YHWH, and I was like, you know, I nudged Asher. I was like, look, hey, you know, like we got some supporters, you know, we have some real believers here in the community, and I know they are, you know, I see the bumper stickers and stuff like that. But it really kind of broke my heart, you know, when the lady walked in, and as soon as she saw us, like she even put her hand on a buggy and put her purse down, and then when she went to like circle, she saw us and then grabbed her purse, put her buggy back, and walked out. And I just thought to myself, like, I mean, right then and there, like, it gives me great comfort to know that, like, I knew her name. You know, I knew that she was connecting in spirit. I knew that, you know, I could figure out, you know, just all through Omnipotent. I knew where she picked up the name, how long she's had it, her enthusiasm, like all these things, right? And in my God mind, if you will, it's like my dashboard like just lights up when I see someone like that, and it makes me so happy. I mean, I had one of my best days yesterday, you know, or Saturday, because of that. You know, I was so excited, like, you know, and that really made me happy. You know, it really made me happy, and then it kind of made me sad that, you know, she kind of turned around and walked out. But, you know, at the same time, I guess, you know, I can take it in a way of honor, like, you know, at least she believes enough, and that's good, you know, because truly I want nothing from anybody. Like, I don't. All I want is I want people to know my name, and I want them to know that when they're attending a church service and they're using the right name, and they're at least attempting, you know, they're getting their mind off of autopilot. And that's how I feel, like, even when I go into my own churches, you know, and I see these people that are so peppy for Jesus, and it's like, you know, I'm never going to say, like, hi, I'm Jesus. because I do not buy into that image. I do not buy into that name, and I will not ever divide my church. I will never divide my Jews to my Israelites to my Christians. I expect the same thing across the board for all my children in the home and my children in the world. I'm not going to be Jesus to the Christians, nor am I going to be Allah to the, Hamas people. I'm not going to be that. I'm the Almighty Creator who's existed before words were accepted. And, for whatever good or bad, humanity has tracked my comings, then and now, and worlds before this one. And that's to your, all your own volition, because I like to keep things simple, like, hi, I'm Yahweh, I'm Yahuwah, right? Joshua, I'm the God from heaven. Like, all these things that have happened in the supernatural are done by me, and it's like having that introduction and then strengthening that relationship. And then, strengthening that relationship then gives other people confidence, because it really comes down to that too, is, people in the Jesus churches, they're surrounded by, friends and family and history and tradition. And, I know to a human being, like, great auntie this, you got 80 years, 90 years of tradition. And that's the thing, like, I don't shame you for that tradition. But at the same time, it's like, I've got to start making, like, big decisions, and I don't want to just keep, like, sending the peril, like balloons and plane crashes and boat crashes and helicopter crashes and, like, tornadoes, twisters. Like, I feel like, in a way, it just makes me mad at myself when I feel like I'm terrorizing my own people, but I'm trying to do it so they can, because the thing is, like, you and here's where I'm at. If you call on false idols, you're going to get false results. That's where I want to prove to people that when you are in a situation like a plane going down and you call upon Jesus, you're dead. And then in your afterlife, my next chance at saving you is going to be you understanding and seeing me for who I am and accepting that and saying, okay, Yahweh, I'm willing to accept your hand in salvation, and I'm willing for you to deliver me into heaven. And once I do, basically, you have that eternal spirit, and boom, I've already created an afterlife along with others that are in their afterlife, but it's called real life. And that's what they're doing. Versus, right, those people that they never can. And that's what I mean. Like, that's so frustrating, because it's like being the adopted father at the adoptive facility, and the kid's like, oh, I'm looking for my dad, and then it's like, hey, I'm the one that adopted you, I got a bedroom ready for you, like, we're gonna go out to the steakhouse, like, I want to get to know you. And the kid's like, so when's my real dad coming? And I'm like, well, your real dad unfortunately is not a good guy. He's my adversary. His name is Satan. He was a brother of the realms, and anyway, it's like they are like that child that's like, well, I don't really care. Like, I want my daddy Satan. It's like one way, but they're not saying Satan. That's what I mean. They're saying Jesus. And I'm like, all right, like, that is an invention of mankind. Debatable, right? Intent is always debatable, truly, because you could look at any situation with the eyes of intent and say, like, well, America's intent to make war with Israel, or to make war with Iran, is warmongering and it's disrupting peace. But on the other end of that perspective, right, we can't have radical Islamic terrorists who think that they can terrorize people, places, and things at their own whim or at all. Like, truly, like, the level of human life that is valued in this place is very low, which is kind of heartbreaking to me too, because when I am setting forth a judgment, and I take out 8 people, it's like a footnote in the bottom of the newspaper, and I'm like, there's nothing that's going to get the world to, like, go, God, we're sorry, we just want to say your real name, and we want to get with the program, and like really, and it's like, no, like people are not interested in that. Like, I don't get that. Like, what is it that humans like want? That's what I mean. Like I don't understand that. Like, I really don't. Like, are people waiting for like some day? Because that's another thing, right? I swear on my own name, Yahweh Elohim Yahuwah, and like not only the Jesus thing, but there is never going to be a time that I'm going to go, my name is really Jesus, and you all failed. You all, like, that's never going to happen, because that's not true. That's what I mean. It's not true. In fact, the prophecy stands, and stands corrected. I come in my own name, and you do not know who I am. But another, if he came in his name, him you would receive. And how many fake Jesuses out there right now, right, that are running around trying to go to Jerusalem, trying to do that? Like, you got all kinds of false messiahs. I'm the only one who refuses to accept anything fake. And yet, I still interact with my community. And there are certain people, right, on a very personal level, they know exactly who I am. They know who Asher is. They know who Cameron is. And they know through their own experiences with me that, like, we are genuinely who we are. And I just want that family extended everywhere it can be. Because when I have people as family, then it's like, okay, I know you're going to be a good purpose to the kingdom. You're going to be a good help to me in helping spread the word, right, effectively. And I'm going to help you supernaturally with your ministry and all these things. But it gets hung up on because of so many of man doctrine. Like, really, that's what it comes down to. Like, mankind's doctrine is all over the place. And frankly, you gotta catch me in the right mood, I guess. I don't know. But that's another thing, like I like Newsmax and all that, but it really kind of broke my heart too. It's like, you see this stuff in the news, like Baba Vaga, prophecy, and I'm like, guys, you have God Almighty on your earth right here, right now, telling you play by play, detail for detail what's happening, and yet you're giving glory to Baba Vaga, or some Greek monk prophesied Israeli strikes, or some bald-headed guy Brandon. Like, you guys, like, that's what I mean. Like, do you genuinely just hate me for who I am, and you're looking for any other opportunity? Because if that's the case, that's the fallen angels. And like I said, you can identify your parents, and that's where I have to really cut you off, because I don't want to be wrathful with my people. And my people could literally be like just a few people, and honestly, in just fact and in truth, I'm seeing, as the creator, as Yahweh Elohim, I'm seeing how people react to me in person. That tells me how you're going to react to me in heaven. And it tells me, do I want you close, or do I want you in a far off realm? Do I want you to have an afterlife that's going to be in my heavenly palace, or a purpose that involves, curiosity, exploration, and co-creation? Or is it a job that's going to be serving others in a distant realm where you didn't want anything to do with me here, so you're going to have nothing to do with me there? And that's very, very real. Versus those that, they're like, I know I can say your name, and I can say it confidently, and I don't have to switch letters out, and I'm not going to make videos about I can prove this in stone. Or, guys, I've proven my name. If you're still making videos like that, then shame on you. Like, I put my name out there. I put my name how I like it spelled. I don't really give a darn if you think it's black, white, Chinese. I am who I am. And in this creation, and in this incarnation now, in the end days, as Yahweh Elohim Yahuwah, or Joshua, as God Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth, right? The father of the gods, the creator of humanity, and adversary to the devil, Satan, is I. And I am who I am. And if you can't accept that, then like I said, if you are a part of my true church and you still reject me or my image or who I really am, I may not necessarily damn you to hell, because I really don't want to go through the trouble. But at the same time, I'm not going to give you like some Gucci realm spot either. Like, we have purposes that are not that glamorous. But either way, I have to make decisions, and I'm making them every day. And I just want to say that for the peril that I'm going to have to strike, at the heart of religious communities, people, those who have led astray and continue. I've processed judgments this weekend at council, and that's why I'm having my somber day today, because I'm already weeping for all those that are going to die, all those that are going to be going down to hell. And I feel confident enough after my counsel that the people that I have ranted and raved, the people that I have screamed at, the people that I have gave lessons and warnings and signs and everything else, they still wait on Jesus. They don't acknowledge me. They still think, whatever. But that time is now going to come to a very quick end. And yeah, like, I'm not looking forward to carouseling batches of people downstairs, but at the same time, that's my job. It's my job. And to my point, hell shouldn't exist, but nor should the people that go there. And that's not my creation. And that's also no surprise that those people cannot. They won't say my name. They don't care about my name. And the thing is, right, they can only see things that are untruth as their truth. And that's not permissible in heaven. That's not permissible in the realms. And it's blatant disobedience to me, Yahweh, Yahuwah, the Creator. And I'm not going to have it. So, but we'll keep it there. I got some stuff I got to do. But, at this point, those that know me and are close to me, like, I love you guys. I keep my protections up. I lament on you guys all the time, day and night. Me and Asher both. We discuss you guys, and she puts her blessing on there with my blessing. Believe it or not, Cameron too. So the three of us together are really completing something that I have always wanted to complete, and I have done in the past. But as I said, this has been a really big issue, just the whole Earth thing. But I finally have my core family intact, back together, on the right track for eternity. Like, we're good, which makes me happy, because first off, in order to expand that family, you have to have your family structure right, solid, before you start adding weight to it. And now me, Asher, Cameron, we are now adding weight being like true congregations, and those that we are actively keeping hands on in spirit, omnipotently in spirit. I got my angels out there directing people's footsteps, directing their hands, and then hopefully my true churches are not getting wrapped up in false apparitions of Jesus in the clouds. We're not getting wrapped up in Baba Vaga. We're not getting wrapped up in prophecy, right? The only prophecy that we should be even looking at is, well, and that's another thing, I can't even go and say like the Bible, because that's been defiled, unfortunately. The core, that's why I'm sticking to the Tanakh, right? The Torah, because other than that, I really can't trust a whole lot after that, unfortunately. So keep to the core, and then again, as far as messianic figures, like the Creator in the flesh, as I am, like, that's what and who I am, and what you're getting for now. And New Earth State, when I decide to go home, because at some point I'm going to have to go and open up other creations that are getting backed up. Like, I can't just spend all my time on Project Earth and catering to belly aches and like stuff like that. But I'm saying, when I depart, I will nominate. I mean, if anything happened to me, my direct successor is Cameron, but nothing's going to happen to me or him. But I'm saying, like, a Messiah type of person is more or less going to be like a ruling king in Israel. And that's only if I make enough progress to do a restoration on the earth and then to join the heaven plane. Because that way, whoever I elect will know me. They'll know they're taking orders from me. And they'll know that if they screw up, that they'll be answering to me directly in person, in the flesh, and then they'll be in big trouble. So a lot of the abstinence of the flesh type of personalities and people, like I said, you're through your own volition, you're going to be in your own type of hell, because you're not going to be in hell, but you'll be really far away from me and my kingdom, and basically you'll be the lowest in the realms, and you'll be in positions of serving everybody. So, you know what I mean? Just saying, a lot of people are flushing crowns down the toilet due to idiocy, ignorance, and stupidity. And I mean, I'm not going to yell at it about it anymore. I'm just going to throw the plagues and the judgments, and I'll let the world watch. I'm working in so many different spheres of influence. President Trump and I have developed a pretty close relationship, and a part of the military action that took place was him and I both agreed that it needed to be done entirely in secret, and a part of that was a little bit of a deception. Wanted to make sure that the adversaries that keep tabs on all these things were confident enough to be able to go back to Iran and to the heads of their commanders-in-chief and tell them that, hey, they were pretty much feeling Gucci. Well, that also prevented any U.S. lives being lost, prevented U.S. Israeli aircraft or assets from being harmed or touched. So I'm very proud of that, but that's still the very beginning of this campaign to liberate Iran. The Iranian people themselves need to stand up and liberate themselves, but between my government, America, and Israel, we're going to be there to help you and help the process. We're going to make sure there's nobody standing in your way, because, well, it kind of is what it is. But there's a lot of different things going on all at the same time, and free will. You're free to apply your words, your actions, your thoughts, your mind, and your function towards me or away from me. It's up to you. So, have a good Monday, and maybe we'll talk to you tomorrow. Maybe not. We'll see.